Great work so far, folks. In this lesson, we're going to learn about taking user input because thus far we've still been hard coding numbers into the code. Now, I can just tell you how to take input from a user in Python, but there's another important skill that I want to teach you, and that's how to look things up online. The reason this is important is because there are often too many things within software to memorize and learn. When you do something enough times and you have enough experience, then you start to remember it naturally. But no matter how good you are at programming or how long you've been doing it, there will always be things that you don't know, and subsequently, being able to find the answers to things you don't know is a key skill. Now, I have a lot more thoughts on this, but they're not important right now. I'll discuss them more at the end of the course in the final section. For now, let's move on. If you go to your favorite search engine and then look up Python input from user, that's all you need to type in. When you're searching for things, always specify the language or the framework that you're trying to do it in, and then what you're trying to do specifically. In this case, take input from a user. However, you can cut out unnecessary words. I didn't say take because it's not needed. I didn't say how to or anything like that. Only focus on the words that are needed for the search. You'll get better at this as you see more examples and do it more yourself. Depending on how common the thing you're searching for is, for example, in this case, getting input in Python, super common, most of the relevant results on the first page will be pretty good. So let's just go ahead and look at Geeks for Geeks here, the first one. If you scroll down here, you can see that there are two different options, raw input and then input, but if you read the description for raw input, you can see this function works on Python 2.x, so we probably don't want this one. Let's go down to input. So in this example right here, you can see that they create a new variable called val, and then they set it equal to the input function, and inside the parentheses, you have the prompt. Cool, let's just go ahead and do the same thing. If we flip back over to the terminal and where our code is, we can go ahead and change this number that we've hard-coded and turn it into input followed by a prompt. You can enter whatever you want. I'm going to say enter a number colon and then add a space afterwards. And I think that's all you need to do. I'm going to write my changes and then execute my code. Enter a number. I'm going to do 5 and then, oh, what is this? Okay. This is a good opportunity to teach you about errors and exceptions. So depending on the language that you're developing in, you're usually going to get two pieces of information when a program crashes and dies. The first is going to be the traceback, or the stack trace is what it's also called. This is going to tell you what line as well as what file the program crashed in. And then the second thing you're going to get is the actual exception or error message. In this case, it's telling us type error greater than not supported between instances of string and integer. String and integer. Wait a minute. Hold up. I clearly input a 5, right? So if I'm comparing num, which is 5, greater than 3, why is it giving me string and int? Well, remember, if you want to experiment and try things out real quick, you can always use the REPL, right? Remember the REPL. So I'm just going to open the REPL really quickly and experiment. I'm going to create a variable called test and set it equal to input, enter a number. I'm going to enter 5, okay, and now I'm going to print out that test variable, and I get 5 with quotations around it. Interesting. And so to confirm this, I can do the type function, remember the type function, and I get class string. Well, there's your problem. It looks like your input function is automatically taking any input and turning it into a string type rather than the integer type, even if it's the number that you entered. And just to confirm this, if you want to look it up yourself online, the actual documentation for the language itself is always a good place to search for things. If you take a look clearly at the input function here and the description, it clearly says, reads a line from input, converts it to a string. There you go. Remember back to the primitive types that we learned. The reason languages have these types is because the way they are handled in memory on the computer is different. And now let's learn about something called type conversion. You'll occasionally run into situations like this in programming where you get the correct output per se, but the program itself is storing it as the wrong type, and so you need to convert the type. Here in this case, we've got a number, but it's being stored as a string or actual literal text when we need to convert it and use it like an integer. So in true software engineering fashion, we know what to do, but we don't necessarily know how to do it. And so what can you do? You can look it up online. Back to our trusty search engine, you can look up Python convert string to int, and that's all you would need to type. Get rid of any unnecessary words, always be specific whenever possible. You are using Python and you want to convert a string to an integer. These kinds of concise, specific search terms will have a higher chance of giving you the results that you want. If you scroll down here, you can see a section converting floats to integers, and then you can see that they're using an int function and then putting whatever they want to convert inside the parentheses. I wonder if you can do the same thing with strings. Let's give it a shot. Now, if we go back to the code, there are actually multiple places and multiple ways that we can do this. Let's show you the first way. The first is when we first take the input, we keep num as a string and then only convert it when we're actually doing the comparisons. And so here, down inside my conditions, I'm going to change num to int of num, put num inside the int function, and then I'm going to do this for both the if and else if statements. And when that's done, go ahead and write your changes, execute your code, and then now enter a number. I enter 5, and now it works. It doesn't give me the exception anymore and die on me. Very good. And now let me show you the other way. And this is actually going to be important for you to also slowly pick up on because it just requires thinking differently as a programmer. Rather than doing this every single time for every condition that I have, I can do it just once in one place, right at the source, right? Up here, the input function, no matter what the user puts in, it will always take it in as a string. But I can always convert that result to an integer, meaning I can actually wrap the input function within the int function. Python will get to this line, it will see the int function, and then it will look inside the parentheses to see what it needs to convert. However, when it looks inside, it will see another function, which is the input function. So then it's going to execute that, ask the user for its input. That will result in a string, which will then be converted to the integer. It might be hard to wrap your head around right now. The more we do it, the better you'll get at it. So don't fret if it doesn't make complete sense right now. We'll learn more about this later on in the course as we work with functions more and then start writing our own. So to wrap up this program, I'm going to go back to normal mode, hit U a couple times, that's for undo, and then I'm going to go up here and then wrap the input function inside the int function, write these changes, execute my code, and then boom, you can see that the program now still works. Awesome, now let's keep building your good Git and version control habits. Exit out of your program and then do git status to see the state of the files inside your repository. You should see // meaning current folder inside the untracked files. And that's because you just created conditionals.py, it's new. So now, if you remember the steps, we have to first prepare the files we want to finalize or stage them, and then we're going to finalize them or commit them. Git add conditionals.py, and then if you want to confirm real quick, git status to make sure conditionals.py was added. Now we do git commit -m, and then in quotes, learn about conditionals or whatever you want your commit message to be. And now, finally, we push these changes to GitHub. We're just going to keep doing this over and over, keep practicing, and I'm going to pound it into your head until it's like second nature to you. Awesome, you have learned a lot of things in this video. Let it stew in your head for a little bit, and then when you feel like you're ready, let's move on to the next thing, which is actually going to be your first programming challenge. Hope you're excited.